My name is Courtney Young. I am 38 years old. 2 weeks ago, I stood in the vaulted kitchen of a luxury eco-cabin in the Cascade Mountains and watched my older sister kick a puddle of melted snow onto the hardwood floor, shoving a dirty mop against my chest. She sneered and told me that since our parents generously paid for this vacation, the least I could do was act like a grateful maid. My father puffed out his chest, stepping into my personal space, and announced that if I refused to pull my weight, I could pack my bags and leave his cabin. He had no idea that the executioner's axe he just handed me was meant for his own neck. I did not yell. I simply pulled out my phone, opened my luxury booking app, and hit cancel on the $6,200 reservation registered exclusively under my name. The automated system voice that echoed through the surround sound speakers 60 seconds later made my sister drop the mop, made my mother burst into frantic tears, and left my father staring helplessly as the smart locks engaged. Before I tell you exactly what that automated voice said and how this toxic family trip unraveled, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Grape Echo Stories, but only if you believe entitled people deserve a heavy dose of reality. I would also love to know how old you are and where you are watching from today. Let me know in the comments. Now let me take you back 48 hours before the locks engaged. I work as a sustainable supply chain manager in Portland. My days are measured in timber exports, logistics, and hard facts. My parents, Jim and Patricia, prefer to live in a carefully constructed fantasy. A month ago, they proudly announced to our entire extended family that they had won an exclusive week-long mountain retreat. The truth was far uglier. They were drowning in secret credit card debt. My mother called me late one Tuesday night, her voice dropping to a breathless whisper so my father would not hear her from the living room. She begged me to cover the exorbitant booking fee to save their pride. She promised me that if I just did this one favor, I would be treated as an honored guest. No cooking, no cleaning, just pure relaxation. I spent the next 3 weeks auditing export manifests until midnight, my eyes burning from the harsh glare of spreadsheets, just to scrape together the funds. I desperately wanted to believe her. A foolish, stubborn part of my brain still hoped this financial sacrifice might finally buy the parental respect I had chased my entire life. The heavy crunch of our tires on the icy mountain asphalt pulled me back to the present. My husband David navigated our all-wheel drive SUV up the final steep stretch of the pass. The air outside smelled sharply of pine and incoming snow. Ahead of us stood the architectural marvel of dark mahogany and floor-to-ceiling glass. My stomach instantly twisted into a hard, cold knot. Parked carelessly across the pristine driveway was my sister Ashley's least luxury sedan. I stared at her slick, summer-tread tires pressing into the gathering frost. The sky above Mount Hood was already turning the color of bruised iron, warning of a severe winter blizzard. Bringing summer tires to a freezing mountain pass was a disaster waiting to happen, but that was Ashley. Everything for the image, nothing for the reality. David shifted into park and reached across the console, his warm fingers squeezing my freezing hand. He did not say a word, but his steady gaze told me he was ready for a fight if they crossed the line. In the back seat, our 15-year-old son Leo quietly gathered his bags. I stepped out into the biting wind, my jaw tight. The front door loomed ahead. I adjusted my heavy coat, the digital receipt burning a hole in my pocket, sensing already that the honored guest promise was nothing but a trap, waiting to snap shut on my ankle. The heavy custom mahogany door swings inward, releasing a wave of heated air that smells of expensive cedar and eucalyptus diffusers. Before my snow boots even cross the threshold, the established sibling hierarchy slams into place. Ashley stands in the grand foyer, holding an artisanal ceramic mug, dressed in a pristine white cashmere sweater that screams her disdain for anything resembling manual labor. She is 41 years old, a licensed real estate agent who portrays a life of endless luxury on her social media channels. Behind the digital filters, she has not closed a legitimate property deal in 8 months, surviving on her husband Kevin's dwindling credit limits and a carefully curated facade of success. "Take your boots off on the porch," Ashley commands, not bothering with a hello. "The floors are reclaimed oak. I do not want salt stains ruining the finish." She speaks with the unearned authority of a property owner. I step inside, peeling off my wet jacket. The cabin is stunning. Vaulted timber ceilings soar above us, framed by floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a panoramic view of the darkening evergreen forest. Smart lighting adjusts automatically to our presence, casting a warm, inviting glow over the plush leather furniture and the central stone fireplace. Before David can even set our duffel bags on the entryway bench, Ashley issues her first official decree. "Kevin and I are taking the primary suite on the main floor," she announces, pointing toward a set of double doors at the end of the hall. "It has the radiant floor heating and the soaking tub, and my back has been acting up. Mom and Dad are in the upstairs loft." She pauses, taking a slow sip from her mug. "You three will be down in the lower level. The stairs are right there." She gestures vaguely toward a narrow, shadow-filled doorway near the kitchen pantry. I know exactly what that lower level entails. I studied the floor plans when I booked the property. It is an unfinished basement bunker, housing the industrial boiler, outfitted with 2 sets of metal bunk beds intended for overflow teenagers. There is no radiant heating down there. There are no panoramic windows. David lowers our bags to the floor. The soft thud echoes in the quiet foyer. His jaw tightens, a familiar sign that his patience is rapidly evaporating. "We drove 4 hours through freezing rain," David says, his voice level but firm. "Courtney has been dealing with sciatica all month. A metal bunk bed next to a loud furnace is not going to work, Ashley. We will take the loft, and Jim and Patricia can take the primary." The moment David pushes back, the parental defense shield activates. My father, Jim, lowers his tablet and steps into the foyer. He uses his deep, authoritative tone, the one designed to make everyone else in the room feel small and insubordinate. "Now listen here, David," Jim says, crossing his arms. "This is a family trip. We are not here to bicker over sleeping arrangements like children. Ashley got here first. She claimed the room. That is the end of the discussion." My mother, Patricia, materializes right beside him. She scurries over and grabs my arm. Her grip is tight, her manicured nails pressing sharply through the fabric of my sweater. This is her specialty, the quiet, toxic gaslighting meant to isolate and confuse. "Courtney, please," Patricia whispers, leaning close so David cannot hear. "Do not cause drama on the very first night. You are getting a complimentary vacation. Your father and I worked hard to provide this opportunity. You should just be grateful you were invited at all. Ashley needs the large bathroom for her skincare routine. You know how she gets if her routine is disrupted." The word complimentary rings in my ears, sharp and bitter. I close my eyes for a fraction of a second, and the scent of cedar is instantly replaced by the smell of expensive floral arrangements and stale wine. I am transported back 10 years to my wedding reception. I had quietly covered the cost of Ashley's premium platinum catering plate because her credit card was mysteriously declined the week before the ceremony. I saved her from public embarrassment. How did she repay my generosity? During the evening toasts, she stumbled forward, sending a full, brimming glass of dark Merlot directly down the front of my custom silk bridal gown. I remember the freezing seep of the wine soaking through the layers of fabric. I remember the collective gasp of our guests. And I remember Ashley's loud, theatrical apology that magically centered the entire incident around her own clumsiness, turning her into the victim who needed to be comforted while I stood dripping in red wine. The resentment from that night bubbles up, a living, breathing thing inside my chest. David shifts his weight, stepping closer to me. He pulls his smartphone from his pocket and tilts the glowing screen so only I can read it. A bright red weather alert flashes across the glass. Severe winter storm warning. The local authorities are predicting 2 feet of snow overnight. Cascade Pass will be closed by midnight. The glowing red radar imagery blankets the entire mountain range map on his screen. We are about to be physically sealed inside this architectural fishbowl with people who view me as nothing more than a convenient stepping stone. My breathing turns shallow. I reach into my own coat pocket. My fingertips trace the cold, hard edge of my phone. Buried beneath that dark screen sits the confirmation email from the property management company. Paid in full, $6,200. Deducted directly from my hard-earned checking account. I could end the charade right this second. I could pull up the receipt, hold it in front of my father's face, and watch his patriarchal authority crumble into dust. But then I look at Leo. My teenage son is standing silently by the door, his shoulders hunched, his eyes darting nervously between his grandfather and his father. He hates conflict. He hates the shouting matches that usually follow family gatherings. If I drop the financial bomb right now, the entire weekend will devolve into a screaming match. I swallow the insult. The taste is foul, familiar, and suffocating. Fine, I say, my voice eerily calm. We will take the basement. Ashley smiles, a thin, triumphant curve of her lips that speaks volumes. She turns on her heel, shouting for Kevin to bring up the vintage wine they brought, effortlessly slipping back into the role of the magnanimous host. Good girl, my mother whispers, patting my arm, before scurrying off to join her golden child in the kitchen. David picks up the bags without a word. We descend the narrow wooden stairs into the dark lower level. The air down here is stagnant and freezing. The industrial boiler hums with a loud, vibrating mechanical thud that rattles the concrete floor. The twin bunk beds are wrapped in thin plastic mattress protectors. It feels like a holding cell. David drops the bags onto the cold floor and turns to me in the dim light. "Why do you let them do this to you?" he asks softly, the frustration evident in his eyes. "Because if I fight them now, Leo pays the price in stress," I reply, wrapping my arms around myself to ward off the chill. I just want one peaceful holiday. Maybe if I play along, they will eventually treat us like family. David shakes his head, unzipping his duffel bag. "You cannot buy decency from people who enjoy watching you suffer, Courtney." I spend the night shivering under a paper-thin quilt, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and heavy footsteps from the luxurious floor above us. I tell myself the sacrifice is worth it. I tell myself tomorrow will be better. But the true nightmare does not begin until the sun crests over the snow-capped pines. Because when I finally drag my exhausted body up the stairs the next morning, seeking a hot cup of coffee to thaw my bones, I discover exactly what Ashley has planned for my teenage son. And the fragile piece I just sacrificed my own dignity to protect is about to shatter into a million jagged pieces. Morning arrives not with gentle sunlight, but with the bone-chilling groan of the industrial boiler kicking into overdrive. I open my eyes, my breath forming faint white plumes in the dim basement air. The thin plastic mattress protector crinkles sharply beneath my freezing limbs as I try to sit up. The concrete floor radiates a damp, biting cold that seeps straight through my wool socks. Beside me, David is already awake, staring at the exposed ceiling pipes with a hardened expression. In the opposite bunk, Leo is curled into a tight ball under a single inadequate blanket, shivering in his sleep. Guilt twists like a knife in my stomach. I promised my son a mountain adventure, and instead I delivered him into a freezing holding cell just to appease a family that views us as second-class citizens. I quietly gather my clothes, determined to find a way to salvage this day. Climbing the narrow wooden staircase, I feel the ambient temperature shift dramatically. By the time I reach the main floor, the environment transforms from a meat locker into a tropical sauna. The air smells rich, infused with the aroma of freshly ground espresso beans and expensive vanilla diffusers. Stepping into the gourmet kitchen, I find Ashley. She is wide awake, looking impeccably rested in a matching cashmere lounge set that probably cost more than my first car. She stands in front of the massive Sub-Zero refrigerator, humming a cheerful tune while pressing strips of clear tape over a bright neon pink poster board. In her left hand, she holds an oversized ceramic mug. The scent of oat milk and cinnamon wafts from her drink. She brought her own artisanal coffee setup from Portland, naturally. I step closer, my tired eyes trying to focus on the neon paper. It is a meticulously drawn, color-coded spreadsheet. Across the top, written in bold black marker, are the words, "Cabin Chore Chart." My heart drops. I scan the columns. The level of entitlement displayed on the refrigerator door is staggering. The chart is divided by family member names. Ashley has categorized herself, her husband Kevin, and her 2 young daughters under a column labeled Rest and Wellness. Their designated tasks for the entire week consist of choosing the evening movie and selecting board games. My parents, Jim and Patricia, are listed under Relaxation Protocol, exempt from lifting a single finger. Then, my gaze slides to the yellow and orange sections. Under my name, Ashley has listed morning meal preparation, afternoon lunch assembly, dinner cooking, daily dishwashing, floor sweeping, and bathroom sanitization. But the orange section is what makes my blood run cold. Under Leo's name, she has written firewood duty. Next to it, in parentheses, she added, chop and haul logs for the outdoor fire pit, clear the back deck of snow, and manage all property trash removal. My sister, a woman who hires neighborhood teenagers on credit to pull weeds from her own front lawn, has just assigned a grueling, freezing manual labor camp schedule to my teenage son. Heavy footsteps sound on the stairs behind me. Leo shuffles into the kitchen, rubbing his tired eyes. He is wearing thin cotton pajama pants and a faded hooded sweatshirt, entirely unprepared for the reality of alpine winter survival. Ashley turns, her bright, artificial smile flashing as she spots my son. She reaches over to the granite island and picks up a pair of stiff, cracked leather work gloves. They look like they were dug out of a forgotten utility closet in the garage. She tosses them across the counter. They land with a heavy, dusty thud right in front of Leo. "Bundle up, buddy," Ashley says cheerfully, taking a slow, deliberate sip of her $9 latte. "The outdoor fire pit is not going to fuel itself. We want to do s'mores around noon, so you need to get a head start on chopping those logs. The axe is in the shed." Leo blinks, looking from the stiff gloves to my face, confusion masking his exhaustion. My protective maternal instincts flare, hot and fierce, burning away the lingering basement chill. I step between my son and the granite counter, pushing the gloves back toward my sister. "Ashley, no," I say, keeping my voice steady, aiming for a diplomatic pushback. "Leo is on vacation too. He is not spending his morning doing heavy labor in freezing temperatures. If we need a fire, we can all take turns managing the wood. We should rotate the chores fairly among the adults." Ashley scoffs, a sharp, condescending sound that grates against my nerves. She rolls her eyes dramatically, leaning her hip against the stainless steel appliance. "Oh, come on, Courtney, do not coddle the boy," she says, her tone dripping with disdain. "Kevin and I work exhausting corporate hours. My kids are little. Mom and Dad paid for this entire luxury experience out of their own pockets. You guys are getting a free ride. The least you can do is earn your keep. Stop being so lazy and pitch in." The hypocrisy is breathtaking. She is standing in a $6,000 rental that I secretly financed, calling me a freeloader. I look past the kitchen island, seeking an ally. The great room is flooded with morning light reflecting off the snowdrifts outside. My father sits in a plush leather armchair, positioned perfectly beside the roaring indoor stone fireplace. He is swiping through financial news on his tablet, a cup of steaming tea resting on the side table. He heard every word. He always hears every word. Jim does not even look up from his screen. "Listen to your sister, Courtney," my father says, his deep voice carrying easily across the open floor plan. "Physical labor is good for a young man, builds character. Do not raise him to be soft. We invited you here to function as a family, so start pulling your weight." This is his parenting philosophy in a nutshell. Hard physical labor is character building for the people he views as subordinates, while true leaders like himself supervise from the comfort of a leather chair. He has ignored the exploitation of his grandson entirely, validating Ashley's delusion. The floorboards creak. David walks into the kitchen fully dressed in his winter gear. He stops, his eyes darting from the neon chart on the fridge to the dusty gloves on the counter and finally to my pale face. He reads the room instantly, the muscles in his jaw feather. He steps forward, his broad shoulders squaring as he looks directly at Jim, ready to tear the patriarchal illusion to shreds. The digital receipt burns like a physical coal in my pocket. I can feel the urge to scream the truth, to watch their smug expressions melt into humiliation. But I catch David's eye and give my head a fractional, silent shake. Not yet. David stops in his tracks. He knows the financial truth, and he knows I hold the ultimate power here, but he is waiting for my signal. He trusts my timing, even when it demands extraordinary patience. He turns to Leo, grabbing his son by the shoulder. "Come on, Leo," David says, his voice dangerously low. "You and I are going for a drive into town to get some breakfast. We will leave the cabin staff to their duties." They turn and walk out the front door, the heavy mahogany slamming shut behind them, rattling the expensive artwork on the walls. I am left standing alone in the kitchen with the people who share my DNA but possess none of my loyalty. The overlapping conflicts are tightening inside my chest like a coiled spring, pushing me closer to a breaking point I did not know I possessed. I swallow the bitter anger rising in my throat. I turn my back on my sister, pull open the refrigerator door, and begin pulling out cartons of eggs and packages of thick-cut bacon. I am going to cook their breakfast. I am going to play the servant for exactly 1 more hour, because as the storm clouds outside begin to gather and darken the mountain sky, a very different kind of storm is brewing inside me. I do not know it yet, but my role as the silent family doormat is about to expire, and it will all start with a simple puddle of water on the floor. The heat radiating from the 6-burner Viking range offers a sharp contrast to the bitter chill lingering in my bones from the basement. For 2 agonizing hours, I stand on the hard slate floor of the gourmet kitchen, operating like a short-order cook in a bustling diner. Thick-cut bacon sizzles and spits grease onto my forearms. A towering stack of buttermilk pancakes steams on a ceramic platter. I whisk eggs, slice fresh fruit, and brew a second pot of dark roast coffee. My lower back aches with a dull, persistent throb. Every muscle in my body begs for rest. From the great room, the sounds of leisure echo through the open floor plan, serving as a bitter soundtrack to my unpaid labor. My father, Jim, has his tablet volume turned up high, listening to a financial analyst discuss market trends while he warms his feet by the roaring stone fireplace. My mother, Patricia, sits on the plush leather sofa, chatting brightly on her smartphone with her country club friends back home. She boasts loudly about the breathtaking luxury retreat her daughters generously organized for the family, painting a picture of perfect domestic bliss. She does not mention the staggering credit card debt suffocating their daily lives. She certainly does not mention the supply chain manager daughter sweating over a hot stove to maintain her illusion of wealth. I arrange the sprawling breakfast buffet across the expansive granite island. It is a feast fit for royalty, prepared by the designated family peasant. The heavy front door opens, letting in a biting gust of alpine wind. David and Leo step inside, stomping clumps of fresh snow off their boots onto the mudroom mat. They returned from their drive down to the local village, having escaped the suffocating atmosphere of the cabin for a few precious hours. David takes one look at the elaborate spread covering the kitchen counter, and his jaw tightens into a hard, rigid line. He sees the exhaustion etched into the corners of my eyes. He knows I am running on empty, burning my own well-being to keep these people warm. Before David can say a word, heavy, deliberate footsteps sound on the floating staircase. Ashley descends into the living area. She has changed out of her cashmere lounge set and is now wearing tailored designer ski pants paired with a pristine white fleece jacket. She looks prepped for a high-fashion winter photo shoot rather than an actual day on the slopes. She walks right past the mountain of food I just spent a quarter of my morning preparing. She does not offer a word of thanks. She does not even acknowledge the effort. Instead, her sharp eyes dart around the immaculate space, actively hunting for a flaw. She finds one near the entryway. Earlier this morning, her husband Kevin dragged a bundle of wet firewood through the front door, leaving a trail of dirty slush and muddy boot prints across the reclaimed oak floorboards. Ashley does not call her husband downstairs to clean up his own mess. She marches straight to the utility closet in the hallway. The door clicks open. She reaches inside and pulls out a damp, gray sponge mop. The faint scent of mildew and harsh pine cleaner wafts through the air. Ashley struts directly toward the kitchen island, her boots clicking sharply against the slate tiles. She stops right in front of me. Without a hint of hesitation, she shoves the long wooden handle forward. The wet, dirty sponge hits me squarely in the chest, dampening the front of my sweater. I catch the wooden pole reflexively, my hands gripping the rough wood to stop it from falling. Ashley pivots, kicking the toe of her designer boot toward the puddle of slush in the hallway. "You missed a spot," she sneers, her upper lip curling into that familiar, dismissive expression I have endured since childhood. "Since Mom and Dad paid for this trip, the least you can do is keep the place pristine. We have standards, Courtney. Try to keep up." The sheer audacity of her statement hangs in the warm, bacon-scented air. I stand frozen behind the granite counter. I lower my gaze to the damp sponge mop in my hands. It is just a basic cleaning tool, but in this specific moment, it transforms into a physical manifestation of my entire existence within this family tree. A lifetime of subjugation crystallizes in a single profound heartbeat. Every canceled plan, every ignored birthday, every unreciprocated favor flashes through my mind. The internal conflict that has tortured me for nearly 4 decades shatters like brittle glass on a stone floor. The delusion is gone. The $6,200 financial sacrifice I made to secure this eco-cabin bought me nothing. It did not buy their elusive love. It did not buy a shred of their respect. It merely funded my own continued humiliation. I paid for the privilege of being their maid. David moves. He crosses the kitchen in 3 wide, forceful strides. His hands are balled into tight fists, his protective instincts boiling over into raw fury. He opens his mouth to tear Ashley apart, to scream the truth about the booking, to expose the rotting financial core of her pampered fake life. I raise my left hand, pressing my palm flat against his chest. I stop him in his tracks. I do not need a savior today. I do not need my husband to fight my battles anymore. The frantic, desperate need for my family's approval drains out of my veins, leaving behind a frigid, crystal-clear focus. I let go of the wooden handle. The mop drops. It hits the slate floor with a loud, wet slap. "Guests do not clean," I say quietly. My voice is a low, icy whisper, yet it carries the weight of a thunderclap. The temperature in the room seems to plummet. The financial podcast on the tablet stops playing. Patricia ends her phone call mid-sentence, the silence rushing in to fill the sprawling great room. My father pushes himself out of his plush leather armchair. The scrape of the chair legs against the floor sounds like a warning siren. Jim marches into the kitchen, puffing out his chest, using his towering height to physically intimidate me. This is his standard tactic: assert patriarchal dominance, crush the rebellion before it takes root. His face flushes a deep, angry red at my sudden defiance. "Listen to me right now," my father growls, pointing a thick, calloused finger just inches from my nose. "I am not going to tolerate this kind of disrespect. If you will not pull your weight, Courtney, you can pack your bags and leave my cabin." He says the words with supreme, unwavering confidence. He truly believes he holds the ultimate authority in this room. He thinks he is putting a disobedient child back in her proper place. It is the perfect plot twist. My father unknowingly just handed me the executioner's axe. Ashley laughs. The sound is harsh, mocking and cruel, echoing off the vaulted timber ceilings like a predator taunting trapped prey. She crosses her arms over her pristine white fleece, leaning her weight against the granite counter. "You heard, Dad," Ashley taunts, her eyes gleaming with vindictive pleasure. "Then leave. We do not need your toxic energy ruining our vacation." I look at my father's red, angry face. I look at my sister's smug, triumphant posture. I look at my mother, who is staring at the floor, choosing silence over defending her youngest daughter. I do not cry. I do not apologize. I do not shrink into myself the way they expect me to. Instead, I feel the corners of my mouth begin to turn upward. A smile breaks across my face. It is a terrifying, liberated, unhinged smile. The heavy chains of my childhood conditioning dissolve into ash. They told me to leave their cabin. They drew the battle lines. They fired the starting gun. And they have no idea that the ground they are standing on belongs entirely to me. The ultimatum hangs in the heavy, warm air of the gourmet kitchen. The crackle of the indoor stone fireplace provides the only sound in the sprawling room. My father stands tall, his chest puffed out, waiting for my inevitable submission. Ashley leans against the granite island, a smug grin plastered across her perfectly made-up face, thrilled to watch me crumble. Patricia finally moves. My mother possesses a unique lifelong talent for witnessing cruelty and reframing it as my own personal failure. She steps forward, her manicured hand smoothing the invisible wrinkles on her pristine wool sweater. She lets out a soft, exasperated sigh, a sound she has weaponized for decades to dismiss my feelings and invalidate my boundaries. "Courtney, please stop being so dramatic," Patricia murmurs, her voice coated in a thick layer of fake concern. "Your sister is just asking for a little help around the cabin. Pick up the mop and clean the wet floor. Do not ruin this beautiful trip for your father over a silly tantrum." This parental betrayal is the final strike. For 38 years, I twisted myself into knots, sacrificing my own peace to earn a fraction of the warmth my mother freely poured over Ashley. I always believed that if I just worked a little harder, stayed a little quieter, and provided enough value, I would eventually be granted a seat at their table. Looking at Patricia's pleading, empty eyes, the tragic truth finally settles in my bones. The well was always dry. They do not want a daughter. They want a subordinate. I do not yell, I do not cry. The frantic, vibrating anxiety that has dictated my family interactions since childhood simply evaporates, leaving behind a frigid, crystal-clear focus. In my professional life as a supply chain manager, I handle multi-million-dollar freight logistics and navigate complex international contracts. When a vendor breaches a signed agreement, I do not waste time arguing. I simply terminate the contract. Today, my toxic family is the defaulting vendor. I slide my right hand into the deep pocket of my heavy cardigan. My fingers wrap around the cold, smooth metal of my smartphone. I pull the device out, the bright screen illuminating my face in the morning shadows of the kitchen. With a quick, practiced swipe, I unlock the phone. My thumb taps the sleek black icon of the luxury vacation booking app. The software loads instantly, pulling up the active itinerary for the Cascade Mountains Eco Cabin. "You are right, Dad," I say, my tone stripped of all emotion, echoing the sterile, unyielding professionalism I use in corporate boardrooms. "I will leave." Jim nods, a deep expression of victory settling over his aging features. He thinks he has won. He believes his patriarchal authority has successfully crushed my momentary rebellion. Ashley lets out a breathy, arrogant sigh, reaching for her artisanal latte as if the boring spectacle of my submission is finally over. I take 2 deliberate steps forward, closing the physical distance between myself and the kitchen island. I hold my smartphone up, rotating the glowing screen outward so it directly faces my father, my mother, and my sister. "Before I pack my bags, I want you to read this," I instruct, thrusting the device closer to Jim's face. My father narrows his eyes, clearly annoyed by the delay in my obedience. He squints at the bright digital display. I watch his gaze track across the bold white text set against the dark mode background. It takes a few seconds for his brain to process the raw data presented to him. The screen displays reservation number 4471. The property address is listed clearly at the top, followed by the dates of our week-long stay. But the vital information sits right in the center of the illuminated glass. Primary guest name, Courtney Young. Payment status, paid in full. Total amount billed, $6,200. Jim stops breathing. The arrogant flush of red drains from his cheeks, leaving behind an ashen, sickly gray hue. His mouth opens, but no sound emerges. He looks from the screen to my face, his cognitive gears grinding to a harsh halt. He cannot reconcile the undeniable digital proof with his deeply ingrained belief that I am nothing more than a dependent freeloader. Ashley senses the sudden shift in the atmosphere. She sets her ceramic mug down on the granite counter with a sharp clink and leans over my father's shoulder to inspect the screen. Her eyes dart back and forth, reading the itemized invoice. The realization hits her like a physical blow. The smug, triumphant grin slides right off her face, replaced by a mask of sheer, unadulterated confusion. Patricia steps closer, her brow furrowed in deep distress. She knows the truth, but seeing it weaponized in broad daylight shatters the illusion she works so hard to maintain. She goes pale, her hands trembling as she clutches the fabric of her sweater. Her lips part, opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air on a dry dock. The dramatic irony hanging over the kitchen island is intoxicating. For the past 24 hours, Ashley has treated me like an unwanted stray who snuck into a palace. She handed me a dirty mop and insulted the very person who literally owns the roof over her head for the week. She mocked the landlord of her vacation. I do not give them time to formulate an excuse. I do not give Patricia time to spin a new lie, or Jim time to muster a defense. I hold their terrified gazes and lower my thumb to the bottom of the glowing screen. "Canceling reservation now," I announce. My thumb presses the bright red button labeled Terminate Stay. The software pauses for a microsecond. A prompt appears asking to confirm the immediate cancellation of the non-refundable booking, warning that the action cannot be undone. I tap Confirm without a single hesitation. The user interface chimes softly, flashing a large, vibrant green checkmark. The screen updates instantly. Status: voided. The psychological shockwave radiating through the kitchen is palpable. It is as if I just detonated a silent explosive in the center of the room. The foundational hierarchy of our entire family structure crumbles into dust right before their eyes. The power dynamic flips so fast it leaves them dizzy and disoriented. Jim takes a staggering step backward, his knee bumping into the heavy side table. The expensive tablet he was holding slips from his loose, trembling grip. It hits the thick Persian rug with a muted thud, the screen going dark. He stares at me, a man suddenly stripped of all his unearned authority, facing a daughter he no longer recognizes. I look down at the damp gray sponge mop resting on the slate floor near my boots. I bend my knees, picking up the wooden handle. I stand tall, feeling a surge of raw, untethered power course through my veins. I walk slowly around the edge of the granite island, stopping mere inches from my older sister. Ashley shrinks back, her designer ski pants rustling against the cabinets. Her eyes are wide with rising panic. She opens her mouth to speak, to try and salvage the situation, but fear steals her voice. I hold the mop out toward her, keeping my expression perfectly neutral. "Here," I say, my voice steady and clear. "You can clean up Kevin's mess yourself, or you can leave it for the property manager. Either way, it is no longer my problem." Ashley mechanically raises her hands, taking the wooden pole from my grasp. Her fingers are trembling. She stands there holding the dirty sponge mop, looking remarkably small and insignificant. I step back, creating physical distance between myself and the wreckage of my childhood. By pressing that red button, I did not just cancel a vacation. I canceled my participation in their toxic game. I stepped entirely out of my lifelong role as the family doormat. David walks up beside me, a fierce, proud gleam in his eyes. He slides his hand into mine, his warm grip grounding me in the present reality. We stand together in the sudden, deafening silence of the gourmet kitchen, waiting for the digital consequences to manifest. The cancellation is processing in the cloud, but the physical reality of this high-tech eco-cabin is intricately tied to its booking software. My family is still trying to process the emotional devastation, entirely unaware that the environment itself is about to turn against them, and the real nightmare is only seconds away from beginning. The silence following my thumb pressing the digital confirm button lasts for exactly 4 seconds. It is a profound, breathless void, heavy with the unsaid realization that the power dynamic in the room has irreversibly shifted. Then the house itself wakes up. Because this property is an ultra-modern, high-tech eco-cabin tucked deep into the Oregon wilderness, it operates on a fully integrated smart grid. It does not rely on a human caretaker to manage disputes. It relies on cold, hard data. My cancellation request pings the property management server in Portland, registers the termination of the contract, and instantly transmits an automated directive back to the mountain. A sharp synthetic chime rings out from the hidden surround sound speakers embedded in the vaulted timber ceilings. The pleasant, perfectly modulated voice of the digital concierge fills the sprawling great room. Reservation voided, luxury amenities disabled, climate control reverting to 50-degree baseline preservation mode, smart locks engaging in exactly 60 minutes. Please vacate the premises. The physical environment instantly turns against the toxic people occupying it. Deep within the walls and beneath the reclaimed oak floorboards, a series of heavy mechanical relays click into place. The sound is sharp, definitive, and terrifying to anyone who understands what it means. The low, comforting hum of the forced air heating system, which had been pumping expensive warmth into the sprawling space, abruptly cuts off. The sudden, ominous silence left in its wake is deafening. The ambient light shifts next. The warm, inviting amber glow of the recessed smart bulbs flickers and transitions into a harsh, low-wattage security white. The cabin transforms from a cozy alpine sanctuary into a sterile, unwelcoming holding cell in the blink of an eye. Panic erupts, fast and raw. Ashley drops the damp sponge mop onto the slate tiles. She spins around, her perfectly styled hair whipping across her shoulders. Her eyes are wide, frantic, reflecting the harsh new lighting. She has spent her entire adult life curating a fake existence of endless luxury on social media, accustomed to throwing money or tantrums at any minor inconvenience until the world bends to her will. She refuses to accept that a machine is telling her no. She rushes across the kitchen, her designer boots slipping slightly on the wet floor, and heads straight for the central digital thermostat mounted on the hallway wall. She reaches out, her manicured fingers jabbing at the sleek black glass interface. The screen flares to life, but it does not display the usual intuitive temperature slider. Instead, a large glowing red padlock icon dominates the display. Ashley taps the glass harder, her breathing growing ragged. She swipes up, she swipes down, her fingernails clicking desperately against the unresponsive surface. The system denies every input, flashing the red padlock with each frantic tap. She is entirely locked out of the controls. The ambient temperature in the cabin slowly begins to drop, mirroring the chilling reality of their situation. I can feel the shift on my skin. The heat is retreating, leaving the frigid alpine air to seep through the microscopic gaps in the architecture. My father recovers from his initial shock. Jim is a man who spent his entire career in middle management, utilizing intimidation and loud, booming authority to force compliance from his subordinates. He has managed our family the exact same way, utilizing financial threats to keep us all in line. He turns toward me, his face turning a deep, dangerous shade of purple. He takes a heavy step forward, planting his feet firmly on the expensive rug. "Courtney, what did you just do?" Jim shouts, his voice echoing off the timber beams. "Undo it right now. Call them back and tell them it was a mistake." I do not flinch. I do not step back. I simply slide my smartphone back into the pocket of my heavy cardigan and look him dead in the eye. The frantic, vibrating anxiety that defined my childhood is entirely gone. In its place is the cold, calculated logic of a supply chain manager who just terminated a bad contract. "I did exactly what you told me to do, Dad," I say, my voice level and unbothered. "You told me to leave your cabin. I am leaving. But since it is my cabin, booked with my funds, on my account, I am taking my reservation with me." Patricia lets out a high-pitched gasp, clutching the collar of her sweater. Jim points a shaking finger at my face. "You cannot just cancel a week-long trip on a whim," he barks, trying to summon the patriarchal authority that evaporated 3 minutes ago. "You paid for this. You are throwing money down the drain to throw a temper tantrum." I shake my head slowly, offering him a thin, razor-sharp smile. "I am not throwing anything away," I explain calmly, reciting the terms of service I memorized during my midnight auditing sessions. The early termination policy is very clear. By canceling before the second night, the property management company issues an immediate 50% refund directly to the original payment method. That money is already routing back to my checking account. The trade-off is an immediate eviction protocol for all current occupants to secure the property. We have 57 minutes left before those doors lock from the outside. I point toward the heavy mahogany front doors. Small, circular LED indicators embedded in the smart locks have begun to pulse with a steady, warning red light. The weight of my words crashes down upon them. The family realizes I hold the ultimate power. There is no manager to complain to. There is no customer service hotline to bully. There is only the ticking clock and the blinking red lights counting down their eviction. Right on cue, the natural world outside decides to join the reckoning. A fierce gust of wind slams into the floor-to-ceiling windows, rattling the thick panes of glass. The blizzard David warned us about has officially arrived. The sky beyond the tree line is a swirling, violent mass of white and gray. The towering evergreens sway dangerously under the force of the incoming gale. Thick, blinding sheets of snow whip across the expansive wooden deck, burying the outdoor fire pit my son was supposed to manage. The howling wind creates a low, mournful shriek as it tears over the roofline, validating my husband's earlier weather checks with terrifying accuracy. David walks up behind me, stepping into the harsh security lighting. He is already wearing his heavy winter coat, having anticipated this exact outcome the moment I refused to pick up the mop. He zips his jacket up to his chin, his expression a mask of quiet, resolute support. He looks at my father, then at my sister, offering no pity, no apologies. "We are leaving," David says, his voice cutting through the rising panic. "I suggest you all start packing." Patricia looks toward the dark, swirling blizzard outside, then back to the flashing red LEDs on the door. The temperature inside the kitchen has already dropped 5 degrees. She begins to hyperventilate, realizing the safety and warmth she took for granted are evaporating by the second. They are about to be cast out into a freezing, hostile environment with nowhere to go. Ashley stares at the locked thermostat, her chest heaving. She refuses to accept defeat. The illusion of her wealth and status is the only thing keeping her fragile ego intact. If she admits I hold the power, she admits her own insignificance. She spins around, her eyes narrowing as she glares at our parents, her mind racing to find a way to maintain her supreme position in the hierarchy. The frantic ticking of the eviction clock forces the buried, rotting secrets of our family dynamic straight to the surface, and the fragile lie holding their lives together is about to be dragged into the freezing light. The plunging temperature inside the grand living room mirrors the sudden, freezing realization washing over my sister. Ashley stands near the digital thermostat, her breath now visible in faint white puffs against the harsh security lighting. She turns away from the locked screen, her designer boots clicking sharply as she marches toward our parents. The target of her fury shifts instantly. She does not look at me. I am merely the hired help who went rogue. Her true venom is reserved for the architects of this humiliation. "Why is her name on the reservation?" Ashley demands, her voice rising to a shrill, piercing pitch that cuts through the howling wind outside. "You told us you won this trip. You told everyone at the country club you were treating the family to a luxury retreat. Why does Courtney have the power to lock us out of our own vacation?" My father sinks back into his leather armchair, the fight draining out of his posture. He looks like a deflated balloon, his broad shoulders curling inward, his chin resting near his chest. For my entire life, Jim projected the image of a titan. He owned a commercial real estate consulting firm, wore tailored suits, and spent his weekends networking on manicured golf courses. He commanded rooms with a booming voice and expected unquestioning loyalty. Now he refuses to meet his eldest daughter's gaze, staring instead at the intricate patterns of the Persian rug. Patricia steps in front of him, trying to run interference, a habit she perfected over 4 decades of marriage. Her hands are shaking violently. She reaches out to touch Ashley's arm, but my sister recoils as if offered something toxic. "Ashley, sweetheart, please lower your voice," my mother whispers, glancing nervously toward David and me, still desperate to maintain the illusion of domestic tranquility. "There was just a small mix-up with the booking agency, a clerical error with the credit cards." "Stop lying to me," Ashley snaps, slapping her mother's hand away. "I am not an idiot. The digital voice just said the primary guest canceled the stay. The tablet showed her name. Did you pay for this or not?" The silence that follows is thicker than the gathering snowdrifts outside. The foundational mythology of our family hangs in the balance. Patricia looks at Jim, begging him silently to take the lead, to spin a narrative that will save their pride. He offers nothing. The ticking clock of our impending eviction leaves no room for creative storytelling. Patricia breaks. Her manicured hands fly to her face, covering her eyes as a ragged, ugly sob tears from her throat. The polished country club matriarch dissolves into a terrified, aging woman facing the consequences of a lifetime of financial deceit. "We do not have the money," Patricia cries, the words spilling out in a rushed, frantic torrent. "Your father's firm has not landed a major contract in 3 years. The bank took out a second lien on the house. The credit cards are maxed out. We are drowning, Ashley. We are drowning in debt." The confession hangs in the frigid air, shattering the generational facade into a million jagged pieces. Patricia lowers her hands, tears streaking her carefully applied makeup, leaving dark mascara tracks down her pale cheeks. She looks at me, then back to Ashley, her voice trembling with the weight of her shame. "I called Courtney," she continues, her words echoing off the timber beams. "I begged her to pay the $6,000. We already told the Henderson family and the Rotary Club members we were coming up here. If we canceled, everyone would know we were failing. We needed this trip to look successful. We needed the photos." I watch Ashley process the information. A normal person might feel a pang of sympathy for their struggling parents. A normal daughter might rush forward to comfort her crying mother or ask how they could help solve the financial crisis. Ashley feels nothing but pure, unadulterated disgust. Her entire worldview is constructed upon the bedrock of inherited superiority. She spent her high school and college years acting like royalty because she believed she was backed by endless wealth. Her current fake lifestyle on social media relies on the assumption that her parents are a safety net of prosperity. If Jim and Patricia are broke, Ashley's status is directly threatened. "You begged her," Ashley says, her upper lip curling in revulsion. "You stooped so low as to beg the supply chain manager for a handout. You let her put her name on the deed to our vacation. You made us dependent on her." Patricia flinches as if struck across the face. "You disgust me," Ashley spits, turning her back on our weeping mother. "You are both pathetic." My sister does not offer to help them. She does not offer to write a check to cover their debts. Instead, she pivots on her heel, directing her fierce, entitled glare back toward me. The reality of her parents' bankruptcy does not humble her. It simply forces her to double down on her own perceived authority. If her parents are too weak to put me in my place, she will do it herself. "Fix this," Ashley demands, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "I do not care what kind of power trip you are on right now, Courtney. You are going to pull out your phone, call the property host, and reverse that cancellation. You will tell them it was an accidental click." She speaks to me with the crisp, impatient cadence of someone addressing a disobedient subordinate who just jammed the office printer. I look at her, marveling at the sheer density of her delusion. She is standing in a freezing room, minutes away from being locked out in a blizzard, having just learned her parents are functionally bankrupt, and she still believes she can command me to serve her. David shifts his weight beside me, his jaw clenching, ready to intervene. I place a gentle hand on his forearm, signaling him to stand down. I do not need a shield. I have a strategy. "Let me see what I can do," I say, keeping my voice soft, compliant, and entirely hollow. I reach into the pocket of my heavy cardigan and retrieve my smartphone. The reaction is instantaneous. Jim exhales a long, shaky breath, leaning back into his leather chair. Patricia wipes the tears from her cheeks, a hopeful, pathetic smile touching the corners of her mouth. Ashley crosses her arms, shifting her weight onto one hip, a smug, triumphant smirk returning to her face. They genuinely believe the natural order of the universe has been restored. They think my brief rebellion has been crushed by the sheer force of Ashley's demands. They think I am fixing their problem. I unlock my screen, ensuring the brightness is turned down so they cannot see the display. I do not open the Eco Cabin booking app. That reservation is dead, buried, and processing a 50% refund directly to my checking account. Instead, I open a premium travel application. I navigate away from the snowy hostile peaks of the Cascade Mountains and scroll toward the dramatic Pacific coastline. My thumb glides over the digital interface, selecting a 5-star, oceanfront luxury resort located in Cannon Beach. I filter the search results for immediate same-day check-in. A breathtaking penthouse suite appears on the screen. It features panoramic glass walls overlooking the crashing ocean waves, a private heated balcony, and 2 spacious bedrooms. The nightly rate is steep, but the refunded money from this frozen nightmare more than covers the expense. I tap the reserve button. I enter the names of the guests: Courtney Young, David Young, Leo Young. The payment processes seamlessly. A vibrant confirmation screen pops up, displaying a welcome message and a digital key code for the penthouse suite. I lock my phone and slide it back into my pocket. I cross my arms over my winter coat, feeling the luxurious warmth of the down insulation. I look at my father, who is staring at the dead fireplace. I look at my mother, who is trying to salvage her ruined makeup in the reflection of a dark window. I look at my sister, who is waiting for me to announce that the heat is coming back on. I say nothing. I simply stand there, watching the people who manipulated, used, and discarded me their entire lives scramble in the freezing dark. The emotional vindication surging through my chest is potent, electric, and deeply satisfying. I am not just surviving their toxicity anymore. I am watching it consume them. The silence stretches, growing heavier with each passing second. The red LED lights on the mahogany doors pulse with a steady, relentless rhythm. Ashley glances up at the vaulted ceiling, waiting for the automated voice to announce the reinstatement of her luxury amenities. When the mechanical click of the heating system fails to materialize, her smug smile begins to falter, giving way to a fresh wave of panicked irritation, setting the stage for her next desperate, humiliating maneuver. 45 minutes remain on the automated eviction countdown. The ambient temperature inside the great room continues its steady, unforgiving descent. My breath now joins my sister's, forming faint wisps of white vapor in the chilling air. Ashley watches me stand in silence. Her sharp eyes scan my face, searching for a trace of submission, a hint that I am secretly working to restore the heat. When my expression remains an impenetrable wall of calm indifference, her fragile patience snaps. She realizes I am not riding to her rescue. The realization does not humble her, it ignites her arrogance. She lets out a sharp, derisive scoff, tossing her pristine blonde hair over her shoulder. "Forget it," Ashley says, her voice dripping with venom. "I do not need your charity, Courtney. I do not need your little power trips. You think you are the only one with a bank account? It is pathetic." She marches over to her designer handbag resting on the granite kitchen island. She reaches inside and pulls out a thick quilted leather wallet. The gold hardware gleams under the harsh security lighting. For her entire adult life, Ashley has wielded plastic currency like a weapon. She pays for lavish dinners to secure her dominance in social circles. She buys expensive, unneeded gifts to remind everyone of her superior status. Her identity is inextricably linked to her purchasing power. "I am going to call the property management company right now," she announces, tapping her manicured nails against the leather. "I am going to book this cabin under my own name for the rest of the week, and when the transaction clears, you, David, and Leo can walk your bags down the mountain. You are not staying in my rental." She pulls her sleek smartphone from her pocket and finds the contact number listed on the digital welcome tablet. She dials, pressing the speakerphone icon so the entire room can bear witness to her triumph. She wants Jim and Patricia to hear her save the day. She wants to reclaim her title as the golden child. The line rings twice. A stern professional voice answers. "Cascade Ridge Hospitality, this is Marcus. How can I assist you today?" Ashley shifts her weight, adopting the crisp, demanding tone of a high-tier VIP client. "Hello, Marcus. My name is Ashley Vance. I am currently standing inside the Evergreen Eco Cabin. The previous primary guest, my younger sister, just accidentally triggered a cancellation on her app. She is having a mental breakdown, and we are kicking her out. I need to reinstate the booking under my name for the remaining 6 nights." There is a brief pause on the other end of the line. The sound of rapid typing echoes through the speaker. "I see the cancellation on file, Ms. Vance," Marcus replies, his tone devoid of customer service warmth, shifting into strict liability protocol. "Unfortunately, once a reservation is voided in our system, the original contract is terminated. The property must be secured." "Then draft a new contract," Ashley demands, her irritation flaring. "I am a licensed real estate broker. I understand how leasing works. Just run my card and turn the heat back on." "I can process a new same-day emergency booking," Marcus states clearly. "However, because your name is not on the original insurance waiver and you are requesting immediate access during an active winter storm warning, corporate policy dictates a mandatory security deposit. The total for the remaining 6 nights plus the emergency processing fee is $5,000. It must be paid in full right now via credit card or direct wire." Ashley smirks. She looks up, meeting my gaze with a look of supreme, unfiltered triumph. She believes she has won. She believes $5,000 is a trivial hurdle to clear for the sake of her pride. "That is fine, Marcus," she says smoothly. "I will give you a card number now." She opens her wallet. She pulls out a heavy, dark metal credit card and reads the 16 digits aloud, followed by the expiration date and security code. "Processing now," Marcus says. The kitchen is dead silent. The only sound is the howling wind outside, battering the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jim leans forward in his leather chair, a hopeful gleam returning to his eyes. Patricia clasps her hands together in silent prayer. "I am sorry, Ms. Vance," Marcus says, his voice breaking the tension. "That card is returning a declined status." Ashley freezes. The triumphant smirk vanishes, replaced by a tight, awkward grimace. Her neck flushes a deep, mottled red. "That is impossible," she stammers, her confident facade cracking. "It is a premium travel card. The bank probably flagged it for fraud because I am out of town. Hang on, run this one." Her fingers tremble slightly as she extracts a silver card from a tight slot in her wallet. She reads the new string of numbers into the phone, her voice an octave higher than before. "Processing," Marcus repeats. 10 agonized seconds pass. The cold air in the room feels heavier, pressing down on our shoulders. Declined, Marcus states. Insufficient funds. The color drains entirely from Ashley's face. The flush on her neck deepens. She swallows hard, her throat bobbing. She digs into her wallet again, her polished nails catching on the leather. She pulls out a standard blue bank card, her breathing growing shallow and erratic. "Try this one," she whispers, the demand gone, replaced by raw desperation. She rattles off the numbers, stumbling over the final 4 digits. "Ms. Vance, this transaction is also declined," Marcus says, his tone tinged with finality. "If you cannot provide a valid payment method, the eviction protocol will proceed. You have 40 minutes remaining before the local authorities are notified of your trespassing." Ashley stares at her phone, her eyes wide with terror. She holds 3 pieces of plastic in her hand, the physical symbols of her entire fabricated identity, now rendered useless. She opens her mouth, but no words come out. The illusion of her wealth evaporates into the freezing mountain air. Kevin, her husband, steps out from the shadows near the hallway. Kevin has always been a quiet man, a software developer who preferred the background, while Ashley commanded the spotlight. He is wearing a dark winter coat, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. His shoulders are slumped, burdened by a weight he can no longer carry in secret. "Hang up the phone, Ashley," Kevin says softly. Ashley spins around, her eyes wild. "Give me your corporate card, Kevin. We just need to cover the deposit until I can call the bank on Monday and sort this out." Kevin slowly shakes his head. He refuses to look at Jim or Patricia. He stares only at the slate floor. "There is no corporate card," Kevin confesses, his voice cracking under the strain. "I lost the job. I was laid off 6 months ago. The severance ran out in October. I have been paying the mortgage with cash advances from those same credit cards you just tried to use. We are broke. We are $100,000 in the hole. We have nothing left." The confession strikes the room like a physical blow. Ashley drops her smartphone. It clatters against the granite countertop, the screen going dark as the call disconnects. Her knees buckle slightly and she reaches out, grabbing the edge of the kitchen island to keep from collapsing. The designer clothes, the leased luxury sedan parked outside, the artisanal coffee, all of it was funded by an ever-expanding mountain of toxic debt. She is not a real estate mogul. She is a fraud. My father stares at his eldest daughter, his jaw hanging open in pure shock. The golden child, the standard against which I was measured and found lacking my entire life, is exposed as a complete financial ruin. The hierarchy I suffered under was not just unfair. It was built on a foundation of absolute pathetic lies. I look at Ashley, waiting for the familiar sting of jealousy or the ache of old resentments, but I feel nothing of the sort. I feel only a profound, hollow pity for a woman who destroyed her own soul to impress people who do not truly care about her. The truth is out. The money is gone. The timer is still ticking. Cornered and stripped of their financial armor, Jim and Patricia realize they cannot buy their way out of this freezing cabin. The checkbook has failed, the credit cards have failed. There is only one tactic left in their arsenal, one final strategy they have relied on since I was a child. They must pivot to emotional manipulation. As the digital clock ticks down to 30 minutes, my parents turn their desperate eyes toward me, preparing to launch a guilt trip designed to shatter my resolve and force me back into my lifelong chains. The digital thermostat on the hallway wall ticks down another digit. The ambient temperature in the sprawling living room hits a rigid 50 degrees. Every exhalation produces a faint, ghostly cloud of white vapor in the chilling air. The heavy mahogany timbers groan under the relentless assault of the alpine blizzard outside. We have exactly 30 minutes left on the eviction countdown. With Kevin's devastating financial confession hanging over the room, the final shields of their delusion are stripped away. They can no longer hide behind Ashley's supposed wealth. Bereft of their financial armor, my parents pivot to the oldest, most potent weapon in their arsenal. Patricia steps forward. She wipes the smeared mascara from her pale cheeks, instantly composing her features into a mask of wounded maternal martyrdom. She takes a tentative step toward the kitchen island, extending a trembling, manicured hand, as if trying to bridge the vast emotional chasm between us. Courtney, please look at what you are doing, Patricia whimpers. Her voice cracks, thick with theatrical tears designed to trigger my deeply ingrained reflexes. You are tearing our family apart over a silly misunderstanding. Ashley was just stressed. I am stressed. Your father is under so much pressure with the business. We are your family. We raised you. We share the same blood. You cannot throw us out into a freezing storm just because your feelings were hurt over a simple cleaning chore. A decade ago, those words would have worked. I would have folded, apologizing for my sensitivity, desperate to restore the fragile peace. I would have swallowed my pride and picked up the mop. Now, standing in the frigid kitchen, the manipulation is glaringly transparent. She is attempting to minimize 38 years of systemic subjugation into a single isolated incident. My stoic silence infuriates my father. My refusal to accept Patricia's manufactured guilt trip breaks his fragile patience. Jim decides the emotional approach is insufficient. He stomps forward, his heavy boots thudding hard against the slate tile. He closes the distance rapidly, invading my personal space, towering over me to utilize his physical size as an intimidation tactic. His face is flushed, his breath smelling of stale coffee and rising panic. "You will listen to your mother," Jim growls, pointing a thick, calloused finger just inches from my chin. "You will fix that thermostat, and you will apologize to this family right now, or so help me God, Courtney, I will make sure you regret this for the rest of your life." Before I can even formulate a response, David moves. My husband steps off the edge of the kitchen boundary, inserting his broad shoulders directly between my father and me. David does not raise his hands, he does not shout. His mere presence creates an impenetrable wall of quiet, fierce protection. He stares Jim down, his dark eyes unyielding and sharp. "Step back, Jim," David says. His voice is smooth, calm, and devoid of fear. "You do not get to speak to my wife that way. Not today, not ever again." Jim balks, his chest puffing out in an instinctual display of bravado, but he takes a hesitant half-step backward. He is unaccustomed to facing direct, unflinching resistance from another man. David goes on the offensive, his tone slicing through the freezing air like a scalpel. "You stand there demanding respect while you treat Courtney like indentured labor?" David continues, refusing to break eye contact. "Do you have any idea what she sacrificed to bring you to this mountain? She worked 80-hour weeks. She audited supply chain manifests until her vision blurred. She cashed out her annual stock options and drained our personal savings to pay $6,200 for this cabin because you were too proud to admit your consulting firm was failing. And how do you repay her generosity? You force her into a freezing basement, demand she cook your meals, and hand her a dirty mop." Patricia clutches her chest, her theatrical tears faltering. "We did not know she paid," she stammers, desperate to deflect the blame. "You knew exactly what kind of person you were exploiting," David fires back, turning his intense gaze onto my mother. "Just like you knew exactly whose social security number you were using 5 years ago when you opened that secret retail credit account." The oxygen vanishes from the room. Jim snaps his head toward his wife, genuine shock replacing his anger. Patricia's jaw drops, her eyes widen in pure, unfiltered terror. I feel my heart pound against my ribs. I had buried that secret deep. 5 years ago, David and I applied for our first mortgage, only to face a humiliating rejection. The bank informed us of $10,000 in delinquent retail debt attached to my name. I tracked the fraudulent purchases to an address across town from my parents' house. When I confronted Patricia in private, she wept, blaming a temporary lapse in judgment to keep up appearances at her country club. I spent 8 months battling fraud departments and rebuilding my pristine credit score. I absorbed the pain. I kept her ugly secret so Jim would not file for divorce. I protected the family ecosystem. David exposes it all to the freezing light. "We found the collection notices, Patricia," David states, his voice ringing with undeniable authority. "She forgave you. She kept your secret to protect your marriage. She shielded you from the consequences of your own fraud, and you rewarded her by treating her like garbage." Jim turns on Patricia, his voice a ragged, disbelieving bark. "You stole her identity?" Patricia shrinks back against the granite counter, burying her face in her hands, unable to produce a single word of denial. The ultimate betrayal is laid bare for everyone to see. The pristine matriarch is a thief. Desperate to regain control of his crumbling household, Jim tries to pivot. He redirects his humiliation back at David, shouting that this is a private family matter, telling my husband he has no right to interfere in their business. "I have every right," David replies, refusing to yield a single inch of ground. "She is my family. You are just the people who happen to share her genetics. The cycle of abuse ends today, Jim. You hold no power over her anymore." Standing behind my husband, I feel a profound, seismic shift within my soul. For my entire life, I believed I had to fight these battles alone, constantly defending my right to exist within their orbit. Now, watching David dismantle their toxic authority with surgical precision, I realize I am no longer an isolated victim. My chosen family is fiercely protecting me. The guilt trips, the intimidation, the financial lies, none of it works anymore. The spells have broken. The temperature drops another degree. Our breath is clearly visible in the cold air. The reality of their destitution and exposed crimes settles over them like a heavy shroud. But the humiliation proves too much for Ashley to process quietly. Stripped of her own financial illusion and watching her parents' marriage implode over stolen identity, she desperately seeks a new target to regain a shred of control. She cannot attack me, and she is too terrified to confront David. She looks past the kitchen island, her spiteful eyes locking onto the narrow wooden staircase. My 15-year-old son is walking up from the basement, a packed duffel bag slung over his shoulder, stepping directly into the crossfire. The heavy, rhythmic tread of winter boots on the wooden staircase breaks the stunned silence left in the wake of David exposing my mother. My 15-year-old son emerges from the freezing basement shadows. Leo steps into the grand living area, a dark canvas duffel bag slung over his right shoulder. He is already wearing his heavy waterproof jacket, his winter beanie pulled down snug over his ears. He looks entirely prepared to face the alpine blizzard raging outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Leo has always been a quiet, perceptive observer. While other teenagers spend family gatherings glued to their screens, my son watches the shifting dynamics of the adults around him. He absorbs tone, body language, and the hidden barbs buried beneath polite conversation. For his entire childhood, he witnessed Jim dismiss my career achievements with a wave of his hand. He watched Patricia offer me backhanded compliments that left me questioning my own sanity. He saw Ashley strut through every holiday dinner, demanding the best cuts of meat and the finest wine, while I washed the dishes. He knows the unwritten rules of this toxic ecosystem better than anyone realizes. Ashley stands near the kitchen island, trembling from the catastrophic exposure of her own financial ruin. Her premium credit cards lie useless on the granite counter. Her husband just confessed to $100,000 of hidden debt. The illusion of her superiority is lying in shattered pieces on the slate floor. She is a woman drowning in her own humiliation, thrashing wildly in the icy water, desperate to pull someone else under to save herself. She locks her frantic, spiteful eyes on my son. Unable to retaliate against David, and lacking the courage to challenge me directly, now that I hold the digital keys to the property, Ashley projects a decade of her own insecurity onto a teenager. "Look at what your mother is doing, Leo," Ashley sneers, her voice shrill and laced with venom. She points a manicured, trembling finger in my direction. She is ruining this entire vacation because she cannot handle a simple household chore. She is throwing a temper tantrum and forcing us all into a freezing storm. You must be so deeply ashamed to have a mother who acts like a petulant, selfish child. The cold air in the room seems to snap tight. My protective instincts surge hot and fierce in my chest. I take a breath, preparing to step forward and shield my child from the toxic vitriol I endured for 38 years. David tenses beside me, his jaw hardening into a rigid line, ready to unleash a second wave of verbal devastation on his sister-in-law. But Leo does not shrink away. He does not avert his gaze. He does not need our protection. My son stops walking. He stands near the edge of the reclaimed oak floorboards, right where the great room meets the kitchen tile. He unhooks the canvas strap of his duffel bag from his shoulder. He lets it fall. The heavy bag hits the floor with a loud, definitive thud. It sounds exactly like a judge bringing a wooden gavel down on a mahogany desk, signaling the end of a trial. Leo stands tall, squaring his shoulders against the woman who spent her morning trying to assign him manual labor in the freezing snow. His expression is devoid of anger. He does not possess the frantic, unhinged energy radiating from my sister. His face is a mask of pure, unbesieged calm. "My mom paid for the roof over your head, Aunt Ashley," Leo says. His voice is steady, rich, and remarkably mature. He does not shout. He delivers the words with the cold, measured precision of a surgeon making an incision. "You stand there wearing expensive clothes, acting like you own the world," Leo continues, maintaining direct eye contact with his aunt. "But you could not even pay for a cup of coffee this morning without begging the bank for a credit limit increase. You have nothing. My mom worked late every single night for a month to buy you a luxury retreat, and you handed her a dirty mop. Do not ever speak about my mother again. I am proud of her." Ashley recoils as if struck by a physical blow. Her mouth opens, her lips trembling, but her vocal cords fail to produce a single sound. The venom drains right out of her posture. The sting of being dressed down by a 15-year-old boy, armed with nothing but the undeniable truth, strips her of her remaining dignity. She shrinks back against the counter, her eyes darting toward the floor, unable to meet the steady, judging gaze of her nephew. Leo is not finished. He turns his attention away from the shattered remnants of his aunt and focuses on the architects of this dysfunction. He looks at Jim, who is still reeling from the revelation of his wife committing identity fraud. He looks at Patricia, who is pressing her back against the kitchen cabinets, her face buried in her hands. "And you two," Leo says, addressing his grandparents with a quiet, devastating clarity, "you are just fake. You care more about what your golf buddies and country club friends think than you care about your own daughter. You lied to everyone to look important, and you used my mom to pay for it. We do not want your fake family anymore." The profound weight of his words settles over the freezing room. For nearly 4 decades, I harbored a deep, silent terror inside my soul. I lay awake countless nights, staring at the ceiling, terrified that my son would internalize the toxic dynamics of my childhood. I feared he would watch me shrink to appease my parents and learn to accept subjugation as a normal facet of love. I worried the generational trauma was a genetic disease I was unknowingly passing down through my own compliant silence. Hearing Leo speak those words, watching him draw an impenetrable boundary around his own self-worth, brings a profound, overwhelming sense of relief washing over my heart. The internal conflict that defined my existence evaporates into the freezing mountain air. I realize, with sudden, blinding clarity, that I have successfully broken the cycle. By standing up for myself today, by refusing to pick up that sponge mop, by pressing the cancellation button on my smartphone, I did not just reclaim my own dignity, I taught my son how to demand respect. I showed him how to identify manipulation and reject it without a shred of guilt. I step across the kitchen tile, closing the distance between us. I wrap my arms around his shoulders, pulling him into a fierce, tight embrace. The bulky insulation of our winter coats presses together. I feel the solid, steady rhythm of his breathing. "Thank you," I whisper into the fabric of his beanie. "I love you, Mom," he replies, hugging me back with equal strength. In that simple, profound embrace, the last remaining chains of my childhood conditioning shatter into dust. The lingering need for Jim's approval, the desperate craving for Patricia's affection, the festering resentment toward Ashley, all of it simply washes away. They are no longer figures of authority holding the keys to my happiness. They are just sad, broken people standing in a cold room, trapped in a prison of their own design. The great room is left entirely speechless. The silence of the toxic family is a beautiful, resonant sound. My father has no booming commands left to issue. My mother has no gaslighting whispers left to deploy. My sister has no arrogant insults left to hurl. A teenager armed with absolute moral clarity has rendered the entire hierarchy obsolete. The shadows in the corners of the vaulted ceiling begin to lengthen as the afternoon sun dips lower behind the swirling gray storm clouds outside. The temperature drops another degree, the chill biting at our exposed cheeks. We stand together, a unified front, watching the illusion of the Golden family dissolve into the harsh, freezing reality of the Oregon wilderness. The clock is ticking down, pushing us inevitably toward the moment those heavy mahogany doors will lock forever, sealing their fate and cementing our freedom. A sharp synthetic double tone cuts through the tense atmosphere, echoing off the timber beams with clinical precision. The digital concierge speaks again, its perfectly modulated voice devoid of any human empathy. 15 minutes to system lockdown. Instantly, the harsh white security illumination drops to half power. Shadows stretch long and distorted across the reclaimed oak floorboards. The visual shift is jarring, transforming the sprawling living area from a bright alpine sanctuary into a gloomy, cavernous tomb. The visual confirmation of their impending eviction finally shatters the last remnants of denial clinging to my parents and my sister. The blizzard, howling against the glass, serves as a relentless metronome, ticking down the remaining seconds of their sheltered existence. The reality of the freezing Oregon wilderness outside those floor-to-ceiling windows crashes over the extended family. A frantic, ugly packing frenzy ignites. Ashley lets out a guttural shriek, abandoning her previous posture of arrogant superiority. She spins on her heels and sprints toward the master suite, her designer boots sliding wildly on the slate tiles. Kevin follows her, his previous quiet demeanor vanishing under the crush of mutual ruin. I hear the heavy bedroom door slam shut, followed immediately by the muffled, frantic sounds of a marriage dissolving. Drawers are yanked open, hangers clatter loudly against hardwood floors. Their voices rise in a chaotic crescendo. Kevin screams about her relentless spending habits, his tone laced with years of suppressed resentment over funding her fake social media influencer persona. Ashley screeches back, blaming him for being a failure, for hiding his unemployment, for humiliating her in front of us. She emerges a few moments later, dragging 2 black plastic trash bags stuffed haphazardly with wrinkled silk blouses, expensive ski gear, and scattered cosmetics. The meticulously curated illusion of her high society life is literally reduced to hauling garbage. While her eldest daughter melts down, my mother reverts to a primal scavenger instinct. Patricia realizes they are about to be cast into a freezing storm with zero funds to purchase a hot meal. She scurries into the gourmet kitchen, her eyes darting frantically toward the large stainless steel refrigerator. I spent $400 at a specialty grocer in Portland to stock that fridge, purchasing organic produce, aged cheeses, and thick ribeye steaks to impress a family that despised me. Patricia grabs a woven tote bag from the counter and yanks the heavy refrigerator door open. She begins snatching items off the shelves, tossing plastic containers of berries and vacuum-sealed meats into her bag with frantic, jerky movements. David watches this pathetic display of theft for exactly 3 seconds. My husband steps forward, his winter boots planting firmly on the tile. He reaches past my mother, his large hand gripping the thick handle of the refrigerator door. He pushes it shut with a solid, definitive thud, trapping her hand outside the chilled compartment. Patricia gasps, looking up at him with wide, frightened eyes. David reaches over to the counter and smoothly unplugs the premium espresso machine, wrapping the thick black cord around the base. "Leave it," David says, his voice devoid of any warmth or compromise. "You did not pay for those groceries, Patricia. Put them back." My mother clutches the tote bag to her chest, her face flushing crimson. "We need to eat," she stammers, her voice cracking. "We have a long drive down the mountain. You cannot let us starve." David crosses his arms over his insulated jacket, blocking her access to the pantry. "You should have considered your travel budget before you booked a trip you could not afford," he replies flatly. "Empty the bag." Defeated, stripped of her country club dignity, Patricia unzips the tote and slowly places the stolen food back onto the granite island. Her hand shakes so badly that a carton of farm-fresh eggs rattles loudly against the stone surface. My father fares no better. Jim wanders through the dim, freezing great room like a man who has forgotten his own name. He gathers his financial magazines, a charging cable, and a leather toiletry kit, dropping items twice before securing them under his arm. He looks incredibly small. The towering patriarch who commanded respect through intimidation is now just a shivering, aging man holding a tangled phone charger. Patricia turns away from the kitchen, rushing to join Jim in the living area. In her frantic haste, the clasp of her pearl earring catches on the collar of her wool sweater. The expensive piece of jewelry tears free, bouncing off the coffee table and rolling across the floorboards into the dim shadows near the fireplace. Patricia drops to her knees. She crawls across the freezing floor, her manicured fingers scraping against the rough wood, weeping openly as she searches for the lost pearl. I stand near the front entrance, watching this chaotic spectacle unfold. Leo stands beside me, his canvas duffel bag resting securely at his feet. David joins us, zipping up his jacket to his chin. The three of us are fully packed, wearing our heavy winter coats, composed, quiet, and ready to depart. The contrast between our organized, self-sufficient nuclear unit and the flailing, toxic extended family dissolving into absolute anarchy is breathtaking. Looking at my mother scrambling on her hands and knees in the gloom, hunting for a trinket while her world collapses, I search my heart for a familiar ache. For 38 years, seeing Patricia cry would send me into a panic, triggering a desperate urge to fix her problems and earn her smile. I expect a pang of guilt. I expect a rush of sorrow. Instead, I find a profound, hollow emptiness. I feel zero pity. Watching her crawl on the floor evokes nothing more than mild, detached observation. This emotional detachment is the ultimate victory. The invisible tether connecting my self-worth to their approval has been severed permanently. They are strangers to me now. The automated voice interrupts my thoughts, echoing through the darkening cabin. 10 minutes to system lockdown. Perimeter sensors activated. The finality of the warning spurs the last frenzied rush toward the exit. Ashley drags her trash bags into the foyer, panting heavily, her face streaked with sweat and ruined makeup. She looks through the glass panels of the custom mahogany door, staring out at the violent blizzard whipping across the driveway. She sees her leased summer tread sedan buried under a thick layer of fresh ice. Her eyes dart from her useless vehicle to my rugged all-wheel drive SUV, warming up in the distance. The realization of her physical vulnerability hits her, igniting a desperate, pathetic calculation in her mind, signaling that she is about to make one final, ludicrous demand before the doors lock us out forever. 7 minutes remain on the digital countdown. The fading ambient light casts long, distorted shadows across the slate tiles of the foyer. A bitter chill radiates from the walls, seeping through the soles of my boots. The psychological foundation of my family has always operated on a very specific, unspoken principle. They required a designated target to absorb their collective misery. For nearly 4 decades, I served as their emotional grounding wire. Whenever Jim felt insecure about his dwindling consulting firm, he mocked my career choices. Whenever Patricia felt inadequate among her wealthy peers, she criticized my appearance. Whenever Ashley needed to feel superior, she handed me a chore. My compliance absorbed their venom, allowing them to maintain the illusion of a perfect, harmonious unit. Now, I have stepped out of the firing line. I refuse to take the hit. Deprived of their lifelong punching bag, the toxic energy pulsating through the dark cabin has nowhere to go but inward. The resulting short circuit is catastrophic. Kevin breaks first. He stands near the grand staircase, dragging one of the black plastic trash bags filled with his wife's hastily packed belongings. The thin plastic catches on a protruding nail near the baseboard, tearing open. A cascade of expensive silk blouses and cashmere sweaters spills onto the freezing floorboards. Ashley whips her head around, her eyes flashing with renewed fury. She marches toward her husband, pointing a manicured finger at the ruined silk. "Watch what you are doing!" she shrieks, her voice cracking under the immense strain of the evening. "Those garments cost more than you made in your last quarter, Kevin. Pick them up and fold them properly." Kevin freezes. He looks down at the scattered clothes, then slowly raises his gaze to meet his wife's frantic stare. The quiet, subdued software developer who spent the last decade funding her delusions finally reaches his breaking point. He does not reach for the sweaters. He drops the torn plastic bag entirely. "They cost more than I made because I have not drawn a paycheck in 6 months, Kevin says, his voice eerily flat, carrying a dangerous edge. "I am drowning in $50,000 of high-interest debt because you needed a designer wardrobe to impress strangers on the internet. I begged you to cut back. I begged you to stop treating our finances like a bottomless pit, but you refused. You had to keep up the charade." Ashley recoils, glancing nervously toward the shadows where our parents are standing. "Keep your voice down," she hisses, desperate to salvage a shred of dignity. No, Kevin fires back, taking a forceful step forward. I am done keeping quiet. I lost my job and you made me take out a cash advance to lease that stupid, useless luxury car parked outside just so you could post a picture of the steering wheel on your feed. And now we are about to be thrown into a blizzard. Do you understand what you did today, Ashley? You had a warm bed. You had a free luxury vacation handed to you on a silver platter. All you had to do was say thank you. All you had to do was keep your mouth shut. But your ego could not handle it. You had to hand your sister a mop. Your sheer, unadulterated arrogance just made us homeless for the night. The brutal honesty of his assessment echoes through the freezing cabin. Ashley stares at him, her jaw trembling, unable to form a single syllable of defense. The illusion of her glamorous lifestyle is dead, murdered by the husband she treated as an ATM. Watching this marriage implode triggers a chain reaction across the room. Jim, reeling from the loss of his own authority and desperate to find a new scapegoat, turns his sights on his wife. He corners Patricia near the dead fireplace, his face twisted in a snarl of bitter resentment. "This is your fault," Jim barks, his deep voice dripping with contempt. "I gave you one simple task, Patricia. Secure a location for our anniversary trip. I told you to handle the logistics. Instead of putting the reservation under my name, you let her hold the credit card receipt. You gave her the leverage. How could you be so utterly incompetent?" Patricia stops shivering. A lifetime of playing the obedient, supportive wife fractures under the weight of his hypocrisy. She raises her head, her tear-streaked face hardening into a mask of pure spite. "My fault," Patricia echoes, letting out a hollow, bitter laugh. "I had to beg her for the money because you ran your consulting firm into the ground. You spent the last 3 years playing golf and pretending to close deals while the bank filed liens against our home. I committed fraud just to keep the lights on while you paraded around the country club. Do not you dare call me incompetent when you are the reason we are penniless." The parents who spent my entire childhood projecting an image of flawless upper-crust superiority are now tearing each other apart like cornered animals. They hurl decades of buried resentments and hidden failures across the dark room. The facade is gone. There is no wealth. There is no loyalty. There is only a desperate scramble for survival. I stand near the entryway beside David and Leo, watching the destruction unfold. My heart rate is remarkably steady. My hands are warm inside the pockets of my insulated winter coat. I feel no obligation to intervene. I feel no urge to mediate their disputes. A sudden sharp gust of wind rattles the floor-to-ceiling glass panels. The sound draws Ashley's attention away from her furious husband. She turns her head, staring out into the gathering darkness. The blizzard has intensified, dropping thick sheets of white powder across the mountain pass. The temperature gauge on the porch reads a bitter 12 degrees. Ashley's gaze locks onto her leased luxury sedan sitting in the driveway. The sleek, aerodynamic vehicle is already buried under an inch of fresh ice. She stares at the low-profile summer tread tires. The reality of the treacherous, winding mountain road stretching for miles below us finally penetrates her panic. Driving a rear-wheel drive sports sedan equipped with summer rubber down an icy, unlit alpine pass in the middle of a winter storm is a guaranteed death sentence. She turns her head slowly, her eyes tracking across the snow-covered driveway until they land on my vehicle. My rugged, all-wheel drive SUV sits proudly in the cold, outfitted with heavy-duty studded snow tires and a specialized winter traction system. It is built to conquer these exact conditions. A new, frantic calculation races behind her eyes. Despite the crushing humiliation she just endured from her husband, her deeply ingrained sense of entitlement refuses to die. She convinces herself that she still possesses a trump card. Because we share the same genetics, she believes I owe her my protection. Ashley abandons the pile of ruined silk blouses on the floor. She marches across the slate tile, her boots clicking with a renewed, desperate rhythm. She stops 3 feet in front of me, her posture rigid, her chin tilted upward in a pathetic imitation of authority. "Give me your keys," Ashley demands. David lets out a low, incredulous breath beside me, but I hold up a hand, signaling him to let me handle this. I look at my sister, studying the frantic, terrified gleam in her eyes. "Excuse me," I reply, my tone dangerously quiet. "You heard me. Ashley says, crossing her arms over her fleece jacket. My car has summer tires. I cannot drive it down that mountain safely. You caused this mess by canceling the reservation and locking us out. You have a moral obligation to fix it. Give Kevin the keys to your SUV. You, David, and Leo can take my sedan. It is the only fair solution. The sheer magnitude of her delusion hangs in the freezing air. She is standing in a dark, 50-degree room, minutes away from being evicted into a blizzard because she pushed me too far, and she is demanding that I surrender my safe, reliable transportation to save her from the consequences of her own superficial vanity. A sound builds deep within my chest. It starts as a quiet, breathless chuckle, bubbling up through my throat until it escapes my lips as a full, genuine laugh. The sound is rich, bright, and entirely devoid of bitterness. I am laughing at the absolute absurdity of her existence. Ashley flinches, her face flushing crimson. This is not funny, Courtney, she snaps. I am talking about our physical safety. I stop laughing. I reach up, gripping the heavy metal zipper of my insulated winter coat. I pull it up to my chin with a sharp, decisive zip, securing my warmth against the impending cold. I step forward, closing the final gap between us, forcing her to look up into my eyes. You should have thought about snow tires before you handed me a mop, I tell her. Ashley opens her mouth, a desperate protest dying on her tongue. The cold, unyielding reality of my words strikes her with physical force. There is no negotiation. There is no compromise. I am not playing the martyr anymore. I am not setting myself on fire to keep her warm. I look past her shoulder, scanning the dim room. My father is slumped against the stone fireplace, defeated and silent. My mother is sitting on the floor amidst scattered groceries, weeping into her hands. Kevin is standing near the staircase, refusing to even look at his wife. The complete collapse of the family hierarchy is absolute. For my entire life, I believed these people held power over me. I believed their judgments defined my worth. I thought they were strong, untouchable titans who held the secrets to happiness and success. Standing here in the freezing shadows, the illusion shatters permanently. They are not powerful. They are weak, deeply unhappy individuals who rely entirely on bullying and manipulation to survive a world they are too fragile to face honestly. I am finally completely free of their influence. A loud, heavy rumble vibrates through the floorboards, cutting through the wailing wind outside. The sweeping headlights of a large, heavy-duty truck cut through the blizzard, illuminating the frosted glass of the front windows. The vehicle pulls into the driveway, its tires crunching loudly over the fresh ice, parking directly behind Ashley's useless leased sedan. The eviction timer has reached its final moments, and the unbending reality of the outside world has just arrived to enforce the consequences they can no longer avoid. 60 minutes, the digital voice delivers its final pronouncement. The heavy mechanical deadbolts inside the custom mahogany doors slide into place with a resounding metallic click. The sound echoes across the frosted porch, signaling the definitive end of their luxurious delusion. We are standing on the expansive wooden deck, surrounded by the swirling fury of the Cascade Mountain blizzard. The bitter 12-degree wind bites into exposed skin, slicing through thin cashmere and designer fleece. David, Leo, and I stand together near the stone pillars, insulated by our heavy winter gear. A few feet away, my parents and sister shiver uncontrollably. Patricia clutches her woven tote bag filled with stolen groceries, her teeth chattering so hard they make an audible clicking noise. Kevin stands off to the side, gripping the torn plastic trash bags containing Ashley's ruined silk blouses, staring blankly into the driving snow. Jim stamps his expensive leather loafers on the ice, his face a portrait of stunned disbelief. The sweeping headlights of an approaching vehicle cut through the blinding whiteout. A lifted, heavy-duty diesel truck crawls up the steep incline of the private mountain pass. The engine rumbles with a deep, throaty growl, its studded mud tires gripping the slick asphalt with effortless traction. The truck halts directly behind Ashley's useless, leased sedan. The high beams remain on, casting long, stark shadows across the driveway. The driver's side door swings open. A rugged, broad-shouldered man steps out into the storm. He wears a heavy canvas work jacket, weathered steel-toe boots, and a thick woolen cap pulled low over his forehead. He holds a ruggedized digital tablet in one gloved hand. He is the local property manager, dispatched by the holding company to secure the eco-cabin following an emergency cancellation. He moves with the calm, unhurried pace of a mountain local who respects the weather and has zero patience for tourists. Ashley sees a lifeline. Despite the catastrophic humiliation she endured inside, her survival instinct overrides her shame. She believes she can manipulate this situation. She believes her charm, her industry credentials, and her perceived status can bend this rugged stranger to her will. She wipes the smeared mascara from her cheeks, forces her trembling lips into a bright, practiced smile, and marches toward the front stairs. She flips the switch, instantly adopting her fake, charismatic realtor persona. "Hi there," Ashley calls out, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness projecting over the howling wind. "Thank goodness you are here. I am Ashley Vance. I am a licensed luxury real estate broker down in the valley. We had a tiny glitch with the smart home interface. The system malfunctioned and locked us out. If you could just pop those doors open, I can get you my platinum card to run a manual override." She reaches the bottom of the porch stairs, leaning forward slightly, attempting to use her physical charm. She speaks to him as if they are colleagues in the high-end property market, equals sharing a minor administrative headache. The property manager does not smile back. He stops at the base of the steps, planting his heavy boots in the snow. He looks at Ashley, his expression entirely devoid of interest. He does not care about her real estate license. He does not care about her platinum cards. To him, she is just an underdressed, shivering woman standing on a frozen driveway. He glances down at the glowing screen of his ruggedized tablet, tapping the glass with a fixed stylus. "I am looking for Courtney Young," the manager says, his voice a gruff, no-nonsense baritone that cuts right through Ashley's forced cheerfulness. Ashley blinks, her fake smile faltering. "Well, yes, she is my younger sister, but I am taking over the lease for the remainder of the week. We just need you to unlock the front entrance." The manager ignores her. He steps around Ashley as if she were merely a decorative lawn ornament and walks up the wooden stairs onto the porch. His eyes scan the group huddled near the locked mahogany doors. "Courtney Young," he repeats loudly. I step forward, pulling my driver's license from the pocket of my insulated coat. I hand the plastic card to the manager. He inspects the name, verifies the photograph, and cross-references the data with the active cancellation profile on his tablet. He nods, handing the identification back to me. "Verification confirmed," he states professionally. "The holding company received your emergency termination request. The 50% refund has cleared our merchant terminal. The property is now officially secured." "Thank you," I reply, my voice steady. "We are departing immediately." "Hold on a minute," Jim barks, stepping out from the shadows near the stone pillars. My father cannot tolerate being sidelined. The realization that a blue-collar worker is ignoring his eldest daughter and taking orders from his youngest child shatters the remnants of his patriarchal ego. He marches toward the property manager, squaring his shoulders, attempting to summon the boardroom intimidation tactics he used during his peak consulting years. "You cannot just leave us out here in a blizzard," Jim demands, pointing a stiff finger at the manager's chest. "We have rights. We established residency in this dwelling. You cannot perform an illegal eviction without proper notice. I know the law. If you do not open those doors right now, I will file a lawsuit against your management company that will bankrupt your entire operation." The property manager stares at Jim. He does not flinch. He does not step back. The hollow threats of a disgraced, shivering businessman bounce off his canvas jacket like harmless snowflakes. "Let me explain how this works, sir," the manager replies, his tone dropping to a low, gravelly warning. "This is not a long-term residential lease. This is a short-term vacation rental. The primary account holder terminated the contract. That means your legal right to occupy this property evaporated 5 minutes ago. You have no tenant rights. You have no squatter's rights. You have zero legal standing on this mountain." Jim opens his mouth to argue, but the manager cuts him off, raising a gloved hand. "I manage 20 luxury cabins along this ridge," the manager continues, his words striking like a hammer. "I deal with entitled tourists every single winter. My protocol is very simple. I am giving you 10 minutes to load your belongings and get your vehicles off this private access road. If that sedan and that rental are still parked on my asphalt when my timer goes off, I am calling the county sheriff." Patricia gasps, clutching Jim's arm. "The sheriff? You cannot arrest us." "They will not arrest you, ma'am," the manager corrects her, his eyes cold and pragmatic. "They will cite you for criminal trespassing, and then my brother, who runs the local towing company, will hook up your cars and drag them down the mountain to the impound lot. You will be left standing in the snow with your luggage. The choice is yours. 10 minutes." The unbending reality of the outside world crashes down upon the entitled family. For decades, Jim, Patricia, and Ashley operated within a closed, narcissistic bubble. They created their own rules, assigned their own punishments, and manipulated the narrative to ensure they always remained on top. They bullied waiters, belittled retail workers, and used me as a human shield against their own failures. They truly believed their perceived status granted them immunity from the consequences that governed regular people. Now, standing on a frozen porch in the Oregon wilderness, the bubble pops. The property manager represents the immovable force of society. He cannot be guilt-tripped. He cannot be intimidated by empty threats of litigation. He operates on hard facts, signed contracts, and verified identification. The social currency they spent their entire lives hoarding is worthless out here in the cold. Ashley stares at the manager, her mouth hanging open. The charming realtor persona dissolves into a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. She looks at her leased luxury sedan sitting at the bottom of the icy driveway. She remembers the summer tread tires. She remembers the empty bank accounts, the realization that no one is coming to save her, that her charm has failed, and that her parents are powerless to protect her, hits her with devastating force. Jim lowers his arm. The fierce, commanding patriarch deflates, his shoulders slumping under the weight of his undeniable irrelevance. He looks at Patricia, who is weeping silently, the stolen groceries heavy in her trembling arms. Kevin does not even wait for instructions. He turns and begins dragging the torn trash bags down the wooden stairs, his boots slipping on the accumulating frost. I watch the hierarchy collapse into dust. I feel David's warm hand rest gently against the small of my back. Leo stands tall beside us, his canvas duffel bag slung over his shoulder, watching his grandparents and his aunts scurry toward their vehicles like frightened mice fleeing a sinking ship. The countdown has begun, and the final treacherous descent down the icy mountain awaits them. The heavy doors of our all-wheel drive SUV close with a satisfying, airtight thud, instantly severing the chaotic noise of the alpine blizzard. I press the ignition button. The engine purrs to life with a steady, reliable hum. Warm air immediately floods through the ventilation system, defrosting the windshield and chasing away the lingering mountain chill. I activate the heated seats, feeling the soothing warmth seep into my aching lower back. Beside me, David grips the leather steering wheel, his posture relaxed, his jaw unclenched. In the back seat, Leo buckles his seatbelt, pulling his headphones over his ears, entirely unbothered by the frantic scene unfolding just beyond our tinted windows. Our vehicle is a fortress of preparation and earned security. The contrast between our sanctuary and the freezing nightmare consuming my relatives is stark. Through the clearing frost on the windshield, I watch my sister face the inevitable consequences of her shallow vanity. The Chekhov's gun she parked in the driveway is firing right before her eyes. Ashley's sleek, aerodynamic luxury sedan sits near the bottom of the steep, sloped driveway. Kevin is behind the wheel, gripping the steering column, his foot pressing hard on the accelerator. The rear tires spin with frantic, useless energy. Ashley leased a vehicle designed for dry, sunny coastal highways. She chose low-profile, summer performance tires solely for their aesthetic appeal, prioritizing her social media image over basic functional safety. Now, as the thick layers of ice and accumulating powder coat the steep incline, those expensive tires transform into a severe liability. A high-pitched, grating whine cuts through the howling gale as the rubber burns against the frost, generating plumes of white smoke but zero forward momentum. The rear end of the sedan fishtails wildly, sliding sideways until the back bumper grazes a towering snowbank. Ashley stands outside in the biting wind, her designer boots sinking deep into the slush. She waves her arms, shrieking instructions at her husband through the driver's side window, her face contorted in sheer panic. The pristine real estate mogul is reduced to a freezing woman trapped by her own superficial choices, her vehicle acting as a heavy metal anchor, anchoring her to the storm. A few yards away, my parents are enduring their own logistical nightmare. Jim and Patricia sit inside their aging crossover vehicle. The engine struggles, coughing and sputtering, before finally catching with a ragged idle. The dome light illuminates their frantic, uncoordinated movements inside the cabin. Jim pounds his fists against the dashboard, his face a portrait of purple, unfiltered rage. Patricia holds her smartphone up near the glass of the passenger window, moving the device around in a desperate hunt for a cellular signal. There are no cell towers serving this side of the rugged Cascade Ridge. The GPS navigation system they rely on to guide them down the treacherous mountain passes is nothing but a blank spinning loading wheel. They are isolated, broke, and directionless, entirely dependent on a digital map that cannot load. Patricia realizes her technological lifeline is severed. She spots the steady, piercing beams of our halogen headlights cutting through the whiteout. Desperation overpowers whatever remaining shreds of pride she possesses. She shoves her passenger door open, abandoning my father, and stumbles out into the harsh elements. The bitter wind whips her carefully styled hair into a tangled, damp mess. She slips on a patch of black ice, her knees hitting the hard frost, but she scrambles back upright, driven by sheer terror. She practically sprints across the slick driveway toward our warming SUV. She reaches my passenger side door, slapping her flat, freezing palms against the tinted glass. Her mouth moves rapidly, her words lost to the shrieking storm. David looks at me, his eyebrows raised in a silent, deferential question. I reach for the master door controls resting on the armrest. I do not unlock the doors. I press the toggle switch to lower my window exactly 1 inch. A blast of frigid air rushes through the narrow gap, carrying the shrill, frantic pitch of my mother's voice directly into our quiet sanctuary. "Courtney, wait! Please, do not go," Patricia begs, her breath fogging the cold glass. "Our navigation screen is dead. Jim cannot see the road ahead. My credit limits are maxed out, and Kevin's cards are declining at every terminal. We have 0 cash left. You have to book us a room down in the valley. Just a cheap motel off the highway, anything. You cannot leave us stranded up here to freeze in our cars." She stares at me through the narrow opening with wild, terrified eyes. She expects the lifelong conditioning to kick in. She expects the obedient, eager-to-please daughter to reach for her wallet, absorb the financial burden, and rescue the matriarch from ruin. She genuinely believes that despite the identity theft, the forced labor, and the endless insults, I will still bend to her tears. I look at the woman who spent my entire childhood ensuring I felt small. I look at the mother who watched her eldest daughter hand me a dirty mop and told me to stop being dramatic. I lean closer to the 1-inch gap. "Guests do not clean, Mom," I say, my voice steady, carrying clearly over the whistling wind. "And apparently they do not pay for motels either. Figure it out." I press the toggle switch. The glass glides upward, sealing shut with a soft, definitive click, cutting off her shrill protests mid-sentence. "Drive," I tell David. He shifts the transmission into gear. The specialized heavy-duty winter tires bite into the ice with supreme, uncompromising confidence. The heavy SUV rolls forward, gliding smoothly and safely down the steep driveway. We pass Patricia, who stands frozen in the snowdrift, staring blankly at our passing vehicle. We pass Ashley, who is kicking the tires of her stranded sedan in a futile display of frustration. As we navigate the winding, treacherous mountain pass, the heated cabin of our vehicle feels like a protective vault. The suspension absorbs the rough, icy patches of the road, carrying us steadily away from the wreckage. I glance at the side mirror, observing the position of my sister's vehicle. Ashley's sedan has slid further sideways across the access lane, entirely blocking the narrow route leading up to the rental properties. Her vehicle is now a rolling hazard, obstructing potential snowplows and emergency vehicles. I pull my smartphone from my pocket. My digital connection remains stable, bolstered by the premium satellite booster hardwired into our SUV. I tap the screen and dial the number for the local towing dispatch, the specific company the property manager mentioned just minutes ago. A gruff dispatcher answers on the second ring. "Hello," I say, utilizing my crisp, professional logistics voice. "I need to report an abandoned, leased sedan blocking a private fire access route near the Evergreen Eco Cabin. It poses a severe safety risk to the plows, and the owners are unable to move it." The dispatcher confirms the coordinates, asks for the license plate number I memorized on my way out, and promises a heavy-duty wrecker is already en route. The impound fees, storage costs, and out-of-network towing charges on a snowy mountain pass will easily total over $1,000. The property manager's brother is about to secure a very lucrative payout, forcing Ashley to face the profound, unavoidable financial consequences of her vanity. I end the call and settle back into the heated leather seat. The storm rages around us, whipping the towering pine trees into a frenzy, but inside there is only warmth, the soft hum of the engine, and quiet breathing. I look into the rearview mirror one last time. The faint red glow of my family's taillights shrinks into the blinding white snow, fading rapidly until there is nothing left but untroubled darkness. I search my chest for the familiar, suffocating knot of guilt that always accompanied my rebellion in the past. I wait for the inner voice telling me I went too far, telling me I owe them my protection. It is not there. The space it used to occupy is filled with a profound, overwhelming sense of peace. The heavy chains of obligation forged over decades of manipulation have rusted through and shattered. I owe them nothing. The path ahead is clear, the asphalt stretching out toward the coast. We are not heading home just yet. I have one final logistical maneuver to execute, a destination that will transform this frozen nightmare into the exact vacation we truly deserved. The descent from the Cascade Range is a study in shifting environments. We leave the treacherous, howling whiteout behind us, the elevation dropping steadily until the thick snow transitions into the steady, rhythmic drum of Pacific Northwest rain against the windshield. The tension that gripped my shoulders for the past 48 hours dissolves with every passing mile marker. My mind, usually a whirlwind of anxious calculations regarding my family's approval, is exceptionally clear. In the corporate logistics sector, whenever a primary supply chain fails, you do not sit in the warehouse and cry over the delayed shipment. You instantly pivot to your contingency protocol. You reroute the assets. You find a new vendor. I did not just cancel that mountain reservation on a blind impulse. When the EcoCabin management software processed my termination request, it automatically refunded 50% of the original $6,200 fee. $3,100 routed directly back to my checking account within seconds. While my mother was crawling on the floor searching for her pearl earring and my sister was screaming at her husband over ruined silk blouses, I was utilizing the secured Wi-Fi network to execute my backup plan. 2 hours later, the dense evergreen forests give way to the dramatic, sweeping cliffs of the Oregon coastline. We pull into the circular driveway of a premier oceanfront luxury resort in Cannon Beach. The contrast between the sterile, hostile mountain cabin and this warm, inviting coastal sanctuary is staggering. Golden light spills from the expansive lobby windows, illuminating the driving rain. A pair of uniformed valets step out under a massive timber portico, opening our doors with genuine, welcoming smiles. We do not have to haul our own luggage through the freezing slush. We do not have to endure a lecture on how to avoid scratching the reclaimed oak floors. We step into the grand lobby. The air smells of salted caramel, burning cedar, and fresh ocean mist. A front desk concierge greets us immediately, addressing me by my name, and hands each of us a ceramic mug filled with steaming, spiced apple cider. David looks at me over the rim of his cup. The tight, guarded expression he carried throughout the mountains is gone, replaced by a deep, resonant relief. Leo takes a long sip of his cider, his shoulders dropping, the stress of the day finally washing away. The concierge hands me a pair of electronic key cards and directs us to the top floor. We walk down a quiet, carpeted hallway and open the door to our penthouse suite. The space is breathtaking. Wall-to-wall glass panels overlook the dark, churning expanse of the Pacific Ocean. A gas fireplace roars to life with the flip of a switch, casting a dancing amber glow across the plush linen sofas and the king-sized beds. The bathroom features heated marble floors and a deep soaking tub, miles away from the damp, freezing concrete of that basement boiler room. I drop my heavy winter coat onto a chair. I walk over to the glass, pressing my palm against the cool pane, listening to the rhythmic, thunderous crash of the ocean waves hitting the shoreline in the dark. This is what true peace feels like. It is not something you beg for. It is not something you purchase for other people in the hopes they will toss you a crumb of gratitude. It is something you claim for yourself. The night passes in a state of quiet, unbroken comfort. We order room service, eat thick burgers and fries sitting on the plush rugs in front of the fire, and fall asleep to the sound of the ocean storm. The next morning, I wake up on my own terms. There is no neon chore chart taped to a refrigerator waiting for my compliance. There is no demand for a massive breakfast buffet. I wrap myself in a thick, luxurious hotel robe, pour a fresh cup of dark roast coffee from the Sweets Brewing Station, and slide the heavy glass door open to step onto the private balcony. The storm has passed, leaving behind a crisp, gray, profoundly beautiful coastal morning. The salty breeze sweeps over my face. I take a sip of my coffee, savoring the rich, roasted warmth, and pull my smartphone from the pocket of my robe. I open my social media applications. I navigate straight to my sister's profile. Ashley's Instagram feed, typically a relentless barrage of curated morning routines, expensive lattes, and staged luxury selfies, is entirely stagnant. There is no update. There is no humble bragging post about a snowy mountain retreat. There is only a deafening digital silence. The real estate mogul persona is offline, buried under the weight of her own hubris. A notification chimes on my screen. It is a text message sent to David, which he forwarded to me while he was still asleep. The message is from Kevin, time-stamped at 3 in the morning. Kevin has always been a passive enabler, but the sheer trauma of the night clearly broke his loyalty to the illusion. His text is brief, exhausted, and remarkably honest. It reads, "The towing company impounded the sedan. The driver would not accept any of our credit cards. The sheriff made us wait on the shoulder in the snow until the wrecker arrived. We had to ride down the mountain in the cab of the tow truck. Jim and Patricia tried to get a room in the valley, but every single motel declined their payments. We spent the entire night sitting in Jim's car under the fluorescent lights of a 24-hour gas station in Sandy. Ashley has not spoken a single word in 6 hours. You guys were right. We are ruined." I read the text twice. I look out at the towering, jagged silhouette of Haystack Rock jutting up from the foaming ocean tide. I search my heart one final time, looking for a trace of sorrow for the people shivering in a gas station parking lot. I look for the obedient, terrified daughter who used to internalize their pain and blame herself for their suffering. She is gone. She died the moment that dirty sponge mop hit her chest. The universe balanced the scales. The hierarchy I suffered under was dismantled not by an act of vengeance, but by the simple, unyielding application of boundaries. They demanded I leave, so I left. They built a life on credit and lies, and the bill finally came due. I did not ruin them. I just stopped shielding them from the reality they created. If you are listening to my story right now, and you recognize this dynamic in your own life, I need you to hear my voice clearly. Maybe you are the designated scapegoat of your family. Maybe you are the one who works twice as hard, gives twice as much, and swallows your pride just to keep the peace at holiday dinners. Maybe you have a sister who belittles your achievements, or a father who uses intimidation to enforce his rule, or a mother who weaponizes her tears to make you feel responsible for her happiness. You might be shrinking yourself right now, hoping that if you just sacrifice a little more of your time, your money, or your dignity, they will finally see your worth. They will not. People who view you as a resource will never view you as a human being. They do not want a relationship with you. They want a transaction. They want a subordinate they can command, so they never have to face their own glaring inadequacies. You do not owe your abusers your success. You do not owe them your financial stability. You certainly do not owe them your peace of mind. The hardest truth to accept is that the love you are desperately trying to earn from them does not actually exist. The well is dry. It was always dry. But the most liberating truth is that you do not need their water to survive. You have the power to rewrite the contract. You hold the authority to determine who gets access to your life, your resources, and your heart. The moment you realize your own value does not depend on their validation, their spells stop working. Their insults become hollow. Their threats become meaningless echoes. Take a hard look at the people you are bending over backward to please. Ask yourself what they have actually done to earn your loyalty. If the answer is nothing, then it is time to stop paying their emotional debts. Do not wait for them to change. Do not wait for an apology that will never arrive. Gather your chosen family, the people who love you fiercely and defend you loudly. Step out of the basement, walk away from the designated role they assigned to you at birth. And the next time they hand you a mop and expect you to clean up their mess, do not yell, do not cry, do not argue. Smile, hand the mop back, hit cancel, and drive away. We are raised on a very specific, deeply ingrained mythology regarding the American family. From holiday commercials to nostalgic television screens, we are sold the idea that blood is an absolute sanctuary. We are taught that the traditional family structure is a fortress against a cold, indifferent world, and that our primary responsibility is to preserve that unit at all costs. But what happens when the fortress itself is the source of the freezing cold? What happens when the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones handing you a mop and demanding you clean up the wreckage of their own lives? The events that unfolded in that remote, snow-swept eco-cabin in the Cascade Mountains were not just about a canceled vacation or a maxed-out credit card. They were the violent, necessary culmination of a generational failure in parenting. For 38 years, my parents, Jim and Patricia, operated under a definition of family responsibility that was completely untethered from reality. In their pursuit of the idealized American dream, a dream measured in country club memberships, luxury leases, and the curated envy of their peers, they abandoned the actual foundation of what makes a family survive: honesty, fairness, and emotional awareness. They raised my sister, Ashley, to be the golden child, shielding her from consequence and feeding her a steady diet of unearned entitlement. They taught her that her worth was intrinsically tied to her purchasing power and her ability to project superiority. In doing so, they did not just spoil her, they spiritually crippled her. They left her entirely unequipped to navigate the real world, resulting in a woman who would rather freeze in a snowbank than admit her own financial ruin. And they raised me to be the shock absorber for their insecurities. I was the designated scapegoat, conditioned to believe that my value lay only in my utility. If I could just work hard enough, pay for enough things, and shrink myself small enough, I would finally earn a seat at their table. But true parenting is not about managing appearances, and it is certainly not about creating a hierarchy of love based on compliance. The most profound responsibility we hold as parents in modern American culture is not to hand our children a pristine, flawless facade, but to equip them with the emotional vocabulary to navigate the truth. When my 15-year-old son Leo dropped his duffel bag on that reclaimed oak floor and calmly dismantled the illusions of his aunt and grandparents, he did not do so out of malice. He did it out of clarity. He watched the adults in his life, the ones demanding unquestioning respect based solely on their age and titles, behave with stunning cruelty. And because my husband David and I had spent 15 years cultivating an environment of emotional honesty in our own home, Leo recognized the manipulation for exactly what it was. He was not blinded by the societal pressure to respect his elders when those elders were actively abusing his mother. That is the true triumph of this story. It is not the cancellation of the $6,000 reservation, nor the poetic justice of leaving my abusers to face the storm they created. The victory is that the generational trauma stopped with me. I took the brunt of the conditioning so that my son would never have to. By refusing to pick up that sponge mop, I provided Leo with the ultimate long-term guidance. I showed him that no amount of shared DNA gives someone the right to treat you like a servant. I taught him that boundaries are not acts of aggression. They are acts of profound self-preservation. Raising children today requires us to look critically at the traditions we inherited. We must be willing to sift through the values passed down to us, keeping the lessons of resilience and hard work, while ruthlessly discarding the toxic demands for blind obedience and superficial perfection. If we want our children to grow into healthy, functioning adults, we must model fairness in our own actions. We must be honest about our failures, rather than hiding them behind a wall of secret debt. We must show them that it is entirely acceptable to walk away from people who demand you set yourself on fire just to keep them warm. These are not easy lessons to learn, and they are even harder to teach when you are still unlearning the toxic patterns of your own childhood. If you find yourself standing at a similar crossroads, examining the quiet fractures in your own lineage, and wondering if you have the strength to change the narrative, you are not alone. I encourage you to follow Grape Echo Stories for more narratives that explore the complex, often messy reality of family dynamics. We share these stories because speaking the truth strips away the shame that manipulation relies on to survive. By sharing our experiences, we give each other the permission to step out of the basement and into the light. As I sat on the balcony of that oceanfront resort in Cannon Beach, listening to the relentless, rhythmic crash of the Pacific waves, I realized something that fundamentally contradicts everything we are taught about morality and family. Conventional wisdom insists that forgiveness is the ultimate virtue. We are told that to find true peace, we must turn the other cheek, build bridges, and perpetually keep the door open for those who have hurt us simply because they are family. Society demands that we forgive in order to heal. But I no longer believe that is true. Sometimes, the most moral, fiercely loving decision you can make as a parent and as a human being is to refuse to forgive. Some bridges are built on rotten timber, and setting a match to them is the only way to ensure your children do not walk out onto them and fall. Walking away without an ounce of guilt, leaving your abusers in the cold reality of their own making, is not a failure of compassion. It is the absolute zenith of self-respect. The story of my family does not end with a tearful reunion or a heartwarming realization of mutual faults. It ends in silence. It ends with a dark social media feed, a frozen mountain pass, and a locked door. And as you reflect on your own life, on the burdens you carry and the people you carry them for, you must ask yourself a terrifying but necessary question. Are you holding on to the mop because you believe it will eventually clean up the mess? Or are you holding on to it because you have forgotten what it feels like?